Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. I'm Gill Nowell, founder of Hosted by Gill and Global Women in EV Day and co-founding director of EVA England. In today's episode, we're focusing on a real-world case study of fleet decarbonisation using hydrogenated vegetable oil, otherwise known, of course, as HVO. And I'm really pleased to be joined by two guests who bring both operational and manufacturer perspectives. We'll be exploring what happens when a mission-critical fleet transitions fuels, what worked, what didn't, and what other operators can learn from that journey. Before we get into the details, let's start with some brief introductions. I'm delighted to welcome Joe Bartle, Transport Manager at NWVA, and Adam Kain Harris, Parts and Sales Director at Harris DAF, to the podcast. So, Joe, if we can start with you, could you give us a quick overview of your role at NWVA and the kind of fleet operations that you're responsible for?
Certainly. Yes, so my name's Joe Bartle. I'm the Transport Manager for Nationwide Vehicle Assistance, or NWVA. I form part of the leadership team, and I've been involved in the large-scale transition of our fleet to help improve our day-to-day performance and provide a long-term strategy clarity for the business. We work with New Era to help us provide strategic resilience for fuel supply, especially important in times such as this. So we recognise them as market leaders and experts in the fuel markets, and bring us a commercial insight and regulatory understanding for market intelligence in a complex and evolving landscape.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Joe. And Adam, from Harris DAF's perspective, can you tell us a little bit about your role and how it connects to fuel and fleet performance?
Absolutely. Morning, my name's Adam Kain. I'm the Parts and Sales Director. So ultimately, I'm in charge of all parts and vehicle sales for the Harris DAF group. So yeah, have kind of a unique position when it comes to, obviously we deal with oils, we deal with fuels in terms of the parts side, but obviously provide vehicles to the likes of Joe and hopefully a few more, Joe, in the future. And obviously to people like me, where are the fuel companies. So we see it very much more from a, Joe's more operational, we're very much more of a supplier in that sense, in the sense of supplying vehicles and obviously giving somewhat of some expertise in terms of how these sort of fuels can reduce emissions and run vehicles. So yeah, this is a major step with the use of HVO. It's kind of a like-for-like change into a diesel engine already. For us, it's pretty seamless, and for the operators. But it's a real good stepping stone really into, what some people see more as the longer-term solutions, i.e. in EV vehicles, electric vehicles, and maybe hydrogen. But HVO is a really good current alternative, and people like New Era supplying that are our customers. So yeah, it's a really interesting project.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Adam. So if we can start with the bigger picture then, because HVO, has been talked about a lot in recent years, but there's still a mix of understanding, skepticism, and in some cases, perhaps hesitation across the sector. So Joe, coming to you first, what are the biggest misconceptions that fleet operators still have about HVO?
So historically, it was seen as a sort of backstreet operation, with people converting second-hand vegetable oil to try and find a cheap way of running cars and vehicles. In early days, there were issues with compatibility. I think it's fair to say that we as a country haven't kept up with the rest of the world, and it's due to companies such as New Era that we were given a better understanding of what the product really was. People don't realise that it's a true drop-in alternative. So we bunker it at our sites, and a lot of people that we talk to are saying, well, yeah, but what happens if you've converted your vehicle to run on HVO? What happens when you get far away and then need to refuel? There's no conversion involved whatsoever. It's a direct replacement. You can still put diesel in. It is absolutely seamless from that perspective. Many fleets query performance loss, and again, this is something that we know from having conversations with our friends at Harris Staff that we from a mile per gallon perspective, we get a much better return. Speaking to the servicing guys, that they've seen positive impacts from servicing on HVO. There is very it's literally the opposite to what the expectation is. Performance is far better on HVO than it is on diesel. There's no cold weather issues. Again, when it was the old products that people thought they knew about, potentially issues with things solidifying. And when I was very much younger, diesel freeze and things like that were a thing. Not with this product. There is no reason not to make the switch. The opposite. There's a great deal of positives, and we're really pleased to be able to prove these due to the significant amount of time and products that we've used.
Thank you, Joe. And Adam, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, you've got to look at the cleanliness. Obviously, it's a single molecular structure, so that it runs a lot cleaner, burns a lot cleaner. It's got a higher cetane value. Typically, diesel's around 51, HVO is around 70 to 90. And that sounds very sciencey, but what that basically means, it just burns cleaner. So there's certain emissions that come out of an exhaust that we get judged on as a manufacturer, which is driving the Euro grading of a vehicle. So we've gone from Euros 1 all the way up to Euro 6, 7s, and looking at 8s into the future. Currently, when you get emissions coming out of an exhaust, you'll get things like particulate matter, which is the black soot that comes out the back of an exhaust. That was something that the catalytic converters, the diesel particulate filters, are meant to stop, and helps us as a manufacturer or selling vehicles that have been manufactured by DAF to reduce the particulates. And by burning HVO, it's upwards of 85% reduction in that, which is an incredible drop from particulate matter production, which just basically means in short that you're clogging up your filters a lot less because you've got a lot cleaner fuel being burnt. And then with regards to nitrous oxide, so nitrous oxide is another exhaust gas emission that comes out that's meant to be blowing a hole in the ozone layer, which is all to do with global warming. Now that's with regards to AdBlue. So we spray AdBlue into the system. They have sensors in the trucks that sense the emissions of a vehicle, and if that emission is too high, it gives a higher dosage of this material. And like everything in the world at the minute, it's so expensive. AdBlue prices are going up. So with the use of HVO, I think it reduces up to about 27%. I think the science is telling us. So again, you're seeing longevity in the vehicles running a bit longer and running cleaner as well. So from our perspective, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because I guess perception is one thing, but operational and actually scientific reality that you've really set out so clearly is another, isn't it?
Absolutely, and these are facts. I mean, if we can read the emissions of vehicles based on certain fuels, and if it's telling us that the science has already backed and previously that if you run a dirtier vehicle, your filters are going to clog up. It's kind of commonsensical, and for definite for operators like Joe, that can only be a good thing. That the vehicles, what we like to call in the business, is uptime. So the vehicles have got more uptime. They're on the road longer, and less in the workshops.
Thanks, Adam. And Joe, coming back to you then. So just thinking about that real world fleet experience. So what changed day to day once HVO from New Era Energy was introduced? And did you come across any surprises, positive, negative?
So one of the immediate things that we found, we met a lot of driver resistance in the early days to using the products. That they, like everyone else, had heard the rumours and weren't convinced at all that we were making a good decision. Immediate change once they saw the performance benefits. But the other side of it, we used to lose our drivers for a period of time where they drove off to a fuel station, went and queued. You see it all the time. Most of them supermarkets these days, aren't they? So you're sat there for a significant amount of time. So we're gaining time, not just the vehicle uptime for not losing it into the dealer, but equally the driver time. We're reducing miles because they're always coming back to base of an evening, or leaving from base in the morning, so they're filling up before they go. So operationally, that's added a good amount of value for us. Carbon reduction. A lot of the contracts that we've won or we're tendering for are looking to us to demonstrate a carbon reduction, and certainly fits with our ESG policy as well. One of the main reasons for running the very new fleet that we do of DAF is to make sure that we've always got the latest Euro compliance and everything's as efficient as possible. And HVO takes it that step further. It gives us the added benefit, and it's now one of our selling points. We're not the only people in the industry that do what we do. We like to think we're the best at what we do. But now that gives us an additional bonus that when we're talking to, and especially some of the big government departments, that they can also utilise our commitment to working with this green fuel to become an upsell for them. We said earlier, I'm really surprised at the increase in performance in the vehicles. That's made a significant difference to us. The return in fuel economy. For the last 7 years, we've been tracking our fuel data, and so we were able to immediately see the change, and we can tell if we've sent a vehicle out of area and it's had to fill up somewhere else. We can see immediately that there's a significant impact to the fuel economy of the vehicle. So something that we and the drivers weren't expecting at all. So there was no driver training involved because it was drop on top. So that made it very easy to implement. Everything's been positive from our perspective.
Brilliant, thank you, Joe. And thinking about your operational needs, and I guess one of those points is clearly around sort of supply and reliability of supply. How did New Era Energy adapt to your operational needs, particularly as a mission critical fleet?
First thing they did was to supply us with a brand new bunded tank with full telemetry built in. So there's no contact required between us and the delivery team. The tank tells them when it needs filling up, so it's a seamless supply. As soon as, if you take the current issues that we've got going on in the world at the moment, the early impact was explained to us by New Era. A phone call from James to say, you need to be aware that these are potential implications. But because of their position in the market and that they've secured fuel, it meant that we'd secured fuel, and we knew that we got 250 or in excess of 250 staff now in our business. So there's a lot of livelihoods, and we keep the strategic road network open across the UK. So us having fuel is absolutely essential, and without our relationship with New Era, we couldn't have guaranteed any of that. So it changes our position in the market. It gives us the strength that we need, and the service certainty to provide to the rest of our customers. That will be for them. No one chooses to ring us, unfortunately. We're a distressed purchase. You've had an accident or you've broken down if you need our services. So yeah, we're not your first phone call, unfortunately, until you need us. So what you need to be confident that when you do need us in that incident, and some of these incidents are major incidents, we'll be on scene for 30, 40 hours, clearing up rolled over lorries and things like that. That you can rely on us to be that.
Yeah, and it's that operational confidence is clearly critical. But I guess it also has to be backed by confidence from the manufacturer side. So Adam, from an engine manufacturer's perspective, what gives you confidence in HVO and specifically the supply quality of that HVO?
Yeah, obviously we've gone into the kind of benefits from our side of running with it in terms of the fuel itself, in terms of the emissions and etc., and how that can keep the uptime of the vehicle up. But specifically, in terms of the quality of the supply, it needs to be consistent, long-term supply really, because we have seen this in the past, particularly on diesel, clogging of fuel filters and things like this, just from inconsistent supply of fuel. And sometimes that's completely not the fault of the operator or the driver. It can just be a certain situation with a certain station or whatever. So having that consistent supply from people like Nowell and the high quality supply is massively important, because for the likes of Joe, he can hang his hat on that. And like you said, he's on the vehicle. He's got his vehicles on the road a lot longer. So absolutely, the quality of the fuel being HVO, but also the supply of it.
So I know that Zemo Partnership run the RFAS, the Renewable Fuel Assurance Scheme. And so how important is supplier verification and standards?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of hitting the EN standards for fuel, which HVO absolutely does, then that is critical. So, having that supply and quality supply is vitally important with the right certification that HVO does.
Yeah. So I think we've got operational experience here. We've got manufacturer confidence, which is a really, really powerful combination. I'm learning a lot. So let's try and turn it into something practical for fleet operators listening. So what should operators do before switching fuels to ensure optimal performance?
I think from my side, Joe might jump in from his side as well. I think Joe really mentioned it, from cleanliness of tanks. So maybe supplying new tanks or absolutely cleaning tanks that are already in situ. Checking the supply. Obviously, we'd love you to all buy DAFs and have DAFs, but a DAF is one supplier of truck that absolutely accepts this fuel. So checking the manufacturer standards that they actually accept the fuel is one. Changing fuel filters from a vehicle perspective, as we said earlier, just having a clean slate when you start really. So from my side, making sure the tank's clean, making sure the manufacturers can take that fuel, and just giving the vehicle a once over really before you start doing it, fuel filters, etc.
Would you ever recommend a trial phase, or would you just, do people just tend to go for it?
Well, from my side, absolutely, we can offer trial phases to people, as like other manufacturers. Like Joe said, these guys are so in the detail when it comes to miles per gallon, things like this, that all these fuel KPIs. So absolutely seeing it for themselves, because I think with any change to fuel, we see it massively now with EV. It's people are very resistant to change. Costs, just unfamiliarity really. So yeah, having trials absolutely would negate some of that. But if not, we have seen people jump straight in as well based on market data that's already there. So
thank you, Adam. And Joe, what would you do first? What would you recommend an operator who's looking to switch to HVO? What should they do first?
Learn from our experience. The HVO is by far the cleaner fuel. So you need to remove, as far as you can, legacy deposits and any issues that may be residual from the diesel position before you start thinking that it might be the HVO that's causing the problem. As Adam said earlier, we started with a clean tank scenario for multiple reasons, not only the legacy deposits, but also because the tank was set up to secure supply for us when we needed it. But getting the vehicles to make sure that tanks are as clean as they can be, that filters are changed ahead of the transfer. I think that it's not essential, but it will help make sure that you understand that these issues aren't as a result of the fuel. it's something that you've been building up over a period of time.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about experience, we've talked about confidence, and we've talked about practical steps. So let's zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture then. So Adam, are we at a tipping point for HVO adoption in the UK?
I think we're definitely moving towards one. In terms of, us as manufacturers, as Joe said, some people in contracts, the demands now on the cleanliness of vehicles is really, really high, and will continue to get higher. I mean, for us as a manufacturer, our EV percentage or zero emissions or lower emissions sort of percentages and ratios are going up every year. So we have to supply these vehicles to make sure we're hitting our targets, and that's obviously in line with the government and the EU targets as well. So yeah, this is absolutely becoming more and more critical year on year, really. And as I said, I do still think it's a little way away, especially in the HGV, the heavy end of the market. In terms of EV, we are still a little bit away from that becoming a huge percentage of what we do. So the use of HVO through quality supply is absolutely the way forward, and definitely a stepping stone that will bridge absolutely the next 10, 15 years, I think.
Thanks, Adam. And Joe, are we at that HVO tipping point yet?
As a fleet operator, I see HVO as the future for us in the medium term. I think government strategy will dictate long term, but certainly in the short to medium term, it will remain HVO. We work with customers in the nuclear sector, and on big infrastructure builds. And if we tried to convince them to take an electric vehicle into a nuclear facility to carry out a recovery, I think that there'd be significant concerns because of the public perception of the volatility when it comes to batteries and whether you want to take them into that environment. We work with a number of bus companies that are electrifying, and they were going down a hydrogen route, which I personally saw as a long-term solution for the heavy goods vehicle industry. But now the government's pulled out of their hydrogen strategy. We were importing significant volumes in because we were monitoring the tankers that were coming in from the continent to stockpile this, and the government's given up because they couldn't sell enough hydrogen vehicles. So whilst the government set the trend and they have policies moving forwards, if they're going to abandon things like that, if they're not going to subsidise the move to EV, then HVO is the only sensible option to decarbonising at the exhaust pipe. Decarbonising at the exhaust pipe, because it is tailpipe emissions that we're being measured on. Hopefully, there'll be some financial recognition for the transport industry of the move towards HVO. It's no longer more expensive, certainly for us, than diesel, which was always a consideration for people. That isn't a problem. Availability isn't a problem anymore. In some forecourts in our local area, the main distributors are actually selling the product at the pump, so it's becoming more and more available. So yeah, as part of a green fleet strategy, I certainly see HVO as being the market leader currently.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you both. It's been such an insightful and interesting discussion. And I think what's come through really clearly is that it's about more than just switching fuel. It's about operational confidence. It's about supply reliability and real world performance, but actually also the science. And for fleet operators, this conversation really highlights that decarbonisation doesn't have to mean compromise. So thank you to Joe Bartle from NWVA. Thank you to Adam Kain from Harris Staff for joining me. And thank you to everybody listening. If you found today's discussion useful, Do keep an eye out for future episodes of GreenFleet Talks. And until next time, thank you for joining us.